Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about a dangerous adventure that happened hundreds of years ago. While England was still dealing with its own problems and Shakespeare was just a kid, Portuguese explorers were sailing deep into East Africa looking for gold. Can you believe that? They were out there exploring the unknown, hoping to find treasure while others were still stuck fighting wars back home. The Portuguese had heard stories about a place called Ophir. According to legends, that's where the Queen of Sheba got her gold, and they believed it was somewhere inland near a coastal town called Sofala. They even built a fort there, right in the middle of a swamp full of disease. One of their leaders, Pedro Dunhaya, fought local tribes, defeated a nearby village, but eventually died of fever along with most of his men. They were buried right there in the muddy ground next to the river. And all the gold they managed to find? Just tiny bits of dust, traded for striped cloth and cheap clay beads. Still, the gold fever didn't stop. About 50 years after Dunhaya died, rumors spread like wildfire across Portugal. People believed there were huge chunks of gold growing out of the ground and stuck in trees. One explorer even claimed he saw a nugget as big as a yam. Some people were so sure this place was Solomon's Ophir just because the local name sounded kind of similar. In 1569, a young king named Sebastian got serious about finding the gold. He sent his best general, Francisco Barreto, on a major expedition. This wasn't just a small mission, it was a huge deal. Barreto had been in big battles before and was a respected leader. He brought along 1,000 soldiers, many of them noblemen and personal servants of the king. There were 3 full ships, decorated with flags and cheered on by crowds. It looked like a parade. But things went wrong quickly. One ship had to turn back, and Barreto got stuck for months, even spending the winter in Brazil. When they finally reached Mozambique, where they planned to start their journey, disagreements broke out. Barreto and his officers wanted to take the direct route through Sofala, but a priest named Father Monclaro insisted they go up the Zambezi River instead. He had his own reasons. He wanted revenge for another priest's death, and that took priority over everything else. Instead of heading to the gold, the group got tangled in politics and revenge. They wasted years stuck on the coast, fighting small battles and trying to collect taxes. Barreto, now an older man, probably knew they were chasing a dream that would never come true. Finally, after more than 2 years, the crew moved up the Zambezi River. But by then, over 100 men had died from sickness. They got replacements, but morale was low. Still, the group looked impressive with boats, camels, wagons, and even horses in armor. The journey was tough, swamps full of crocodiles and hippos, thick trees and tribes that looked very different from anything the Portuguese had seen. Some locals had their lips stretched down with metal pieces and wore red paint in their hair. Eventually, they reached a village called Sina. The Arab traders there welcomed them kindly. These traders had made money selling beads and cloth for gold. But Monclaro accused them of poisoning the Portuguese animals. The real cause was a fly called the tsetse, but no one listened. After torturing a groom who confessed a fake story, the group arrested 17 Arab men, including the local leader. Sadly, they were killed in brutal ways. One man even converted to Christianity and was still hanged with a crucifix around his neck. Even after all that violence, the deaths continued. Animals and men kept dying, and the gold was still nowhere to be found. In July 1572, Barreto tried again. This time, he had 650 soldiers and lots of supplies. They marched in shiny armor along the river, hoping to meet the leader of the land, the Monomotapa, whose army was said to be 100,000 strong. Barreto wanted to make peace with the Monomotapa, so he offered to fight a rebellious group called the Mangas. These people had caused trouble for both the Portuguese and the local leader. Barreto left the sick behind and led his troops through harsh terrain. The heat was unbearable, the ground was rocky, and water was hard to find. Many soldiers got sick from dysentery and dehydration, and they began to fall one by one. And after 9 long days of tough marching, the Portuguese soldiers finally saw signs of their enemies. At first, it was just the scouts who spotted them. These scouts made big clouds of dust by spinning sticks with buffalo tails tied to them. It looked strange and spooky. As the army moved into a flat field full of tall grass and reeds, they could finally see the enemy clearly. A huge army of Mongols, maybe 10 or 12,000 strong, ready to fight. But Captain Barreto didn't panic. He knew what to do. He told his men to form a big square. There were groups of soldiers at the front and back and on both sides. In the center, they kept their supplies safe. Cannons were placed all around the square. A small cannon was at the back, bigger ones on the sides, and 3 heavy field guns up front. This setup wasn't random, it was smart. Even many years later, the British used the same kind of formation in South Africa. The Mongols charged in a crescent shape, trying to surround the square. They threw arrows, or maybe short spears called assegais. It was hard to tell in the heat of battle. But they weren't afraid. They ran straight toward the Portuguese, getting dangerously close to their guns. There's a story that sounds almost too strange to be true. Leading the Mongols was an old woman, believed to be a powerful witch. She came forward, took some dust from a small container and tossed it into the air. The Mongols thought this magic would blind the Portuguese and make it easy to catch them. They even brought ropes to tie them up. Barreto wasn't taking any chances. When he saw her strange actions, he told his gunner to shoot. The gunner aimed carefully and fired. The old woman was hit and killed right away. The Mongols were shocked. They believed she couldn't be killed. Barreto took off his own gold chain and gave it to the gunner as a reward. But the Mongols didn't give up. They screamed and charged again, waving short spears and heavy wooden clubs called knapkeris. Father Monclaro, a priest who always acted brave, walked into the battle holding a crucifix high in the air. He later said no one near him got hit, as if the cross was protecting them. Maybe it was faith, or maybe luck, but that's how strong their beliefs were. In the end, the Portuguese won because of their strong formation and powerful guns. The Mongols couldn't match the firepower. As the smoke from the cannons filled the air, the Mongols thought it was magic turning day into night. Over 4,000 Mongols were killed. After losing so many warriors, their leaders asked for peace. Barreto met them in full style. He sat on a chair covered in velvet, wearing shiny armor with a sword across his chest. A young boy stood beside him holding a bright steel shield. He looked like a king. The Mongols chief who came to meet him was shaking with fear. When the Mongols saw the camels the Portuguese had brought, they were terrified. Locals believed camels ate people. So, the Mongols quickly agreed to whatever Barreto asked. Even though they had won, it didn't feel like a victory. The army was tired, many were hurt or sick, and they were low on food and water. More dry, empty land lay ahead. Barreto had to give the order to turn back. The journey back was terrible. They had to walk over 70 miles through hot, cracked land. The only water they could find was dirty and full of bugs. It smelled awful. Many soldiers fainted. There weren't enough healthy men to carry the sick. Barreto even shared his horse to help those who couldn't walk. At last they reached their boats. But more bad news was waiting. Barreto learned that the governor he had trusted in Mozambique had turned against him. That man had sent lies about Barreto to the king and made others sign false letters. Barreto went to talk to him. They met in a small chapel near the sea. Some say Barreto planned to kill him. But when Barreto showed him the fake letters, the man broke down crying and begged for forgiveness. Barreto, feeling heartbroken, turned and walked away in silence. Then, more sadness hit Barreto. He learned his wife had died in Lisbon. His son had died in Sina. His trusted friend had betrayed him. Still, Barreto did his best. He gathered supplies and went back up the dangerous Zambezi River. But when he reached Sena, what he saw was heartbreaking. Only 50 soldiers were left. They stood up weakly, holding their torn flags to honor him. Most couldn't even walk. The sick lay in huts, looking like they were already dead. One man, stronger than the rest, managed to fire the muskets to welcome Barreto. The others were too weak to move. No one was healthy. The colonel passed out with fever. The army doctor was dying. Barreto walked among them trying to help. But 8 days later, he too got sick. Father Monclero stayed with him. He gave Barreto the last prayers and watched him as he passed away in a straw hut. Barreto had nothing left, not even enough money for a proper grave. They buried him in the chapel of St. Marcal, but it was already full of bodies. So they had to dig his grave sideways next to the altar. Out of thousands who began the journey, only around 180 survived, and even they were weak. The new leader, Vasco Omeng, took the remaining men back to Mozambique. He brought in new soldiers and, after a lot of hard work and pain, finally reached the mines they had dreamed of. They thought they had found King Solomon's Ophir. They expected piles of gold and treasure. But what they found were tired local people digging small holes. The gold was just tiny grains, barely enough to matter. It was a huge disappointment.